Definitely big taxes on the shit, and it's Australian government, definitely, 100%. Because I don't know how much Nvidia makes, but I know the suppliers don't make big money. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it would be so much more cruisier when stuff goes wrong, you know? Because there's such a big process on it. So, I mean, if it goes under warranty, you know, and people don't realise that. It's not just, oh, give me the card, here's your new card. Oh, give me the card, I've got to test it, I've got to write up a form, I've got to send it to the supplier. You know, I've got to cover the cost of it going to the supplier. The supplier's got to then do the test themselves also and see if they can get the problem. And then from there, then they've got to send it back to wherever they bought it from if they don't have one. And even if they do have one, they're still got to send it back because they're still got to get it fixed.
Yeah, man. Okay, so the whole supply situation is just a mess right now, eh? So New Zealand aren't having problems.
Not what I'm aware of, not in Auckland, yeah. I don't know about Christchurch, because Christchurch has only really got one big player down there. And I'm not saying they're not having too many problems, but DMTech probably own the marketplace there, and they probably could get a lot of it, you know what I mean, quite easy, because they're buying in bulk amounts.
So have you heard any update on the 6800 XT or 6800 or what?
All I've got is one on back order, and I haven't heard anything about that at all. You know,
what I'm seeing with that is like in the US, they've raised the prices of the board partner cards.
Really? Okay. I'll find out. I've got a price there. I can't remember what price it is. But I'm not finding the demand for it either. You know what I mean? Like,
really?
The demand on that card, I probably get a call. I probably had 2 calls versus the 3080 when it first came out. I was probably about 12 calls a day versus now it went a little bit quiet and I'm probably getting 4 calls a day. But most of these people already have got back orders, maybe at 2 or 3 places, and if they can get it from us, then they'll drop all their back orders. So it's interesting, dude. Yeah, I mean, look, definitely Azus is the one everybody wants. But once we get one, like they might back order the Azus Tough or maybe Strict. But as soon as we get one, I would say 80%. Once we say what we've got, they will say yes to it.
So would you have any idea when these cards are going to get back in healthy supply or not? Like, have you heard anything?
February, to be honest.
Okay, you're thinking February. That's for the 3080.
Yeah, 3080s to be probably back to normal. I reckon it will be February. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that shops won't have them. Of course, you know, everyone will have an opportunity to get one. You just got to act quick, I guess. Like every single time I get one, it pretty much sells that day.
Well, that's what I'm finding.
That's what I'm finding, dude. As soon as like I get a chance to get a 3080, I'm just like, yep, give me that 3080, like ASAP. I'll take it, whatever.
Yeah, 3080s are not a problem to sell at all. They even add a little bit of higher price on it, you know what I mean? But, you know, as I said to you, if you're only making $50, $60 on a card, what's the point of selling it and investing that sort of money? You know, as a shop, you've got to make more money. You know, otherwise, there's no point. And that's why, you know, like a lot of people will not invest too much on like 3090s. Like as a shop, I won't. Definitely won't.
Okay, interesting, yeah.
Profit on it.
That's an Intel logo on my shirt, man. Viewers are gonna say like, dude, you're an Intel shill, so we'll just cover that one up. Now I'm a phantom gamer. I've been speaking to a few people in the industry and I'm asking about 6800 XTs, 6800s, RTX 3080s, and what I'm seeing is 3070s and 3090s are starting to come into stock, like you can just go buy them off the shelves. But 3080s are just still in such high demand. And if I was to pull up a paint shop diagram here for you guys, every time I do a paint shop diagram, you guys absolutely love it. So we're gonna put in here the 3080 demand on the scale here for you. And we can just see it's through the roof. Like if this was Pinocchio's nose, it would just... So RTX 3080 supply, if you're after one of these, you may be waiting, as we heard there, until February because they've got to fulfill all the pre-orders. Now, 6800 XT, I've been asked to check the prices here, and from what I can see, the AIB pricing is very odd because at least when the 3080 launched, there was cards at MSRP. Now, 6800 XT, 3080 had the exact same problems. There just wasn't enough supply and there was way too much demand. But what I've seen with the 6800 XTs, at least with the AIB cards, is that they're not even on sale from scalpers on eBay, which is kind of odd because usually the scalpers and the bots are the ones getting these cards as quick as possible. Even if they're one per customer kind of thing, they're on top of that and you'd see them being reflipped on eBay. But you're not seeing that for any of the AIB cards, at least from what I can see right now. But we are seeing reference 6800 XTs, 6800s on sale on eBay. So if anything, I'd say AMD are going to have the exact same problem that Nvidia's had, where there's not enough supply. Whether they've got a little bit more supply or a little bit less supply than the 3080 on launch, it doesn't matter. Demand for these cards, especially the 3080 and the 6800 XT in particular, is through the roof. And that's not going to be alleviated until all those pre-orders are fulfilled. But what's going to happen in 2021 is that there could be more hiccups. Like 2020 has just been this year where everyone stayed at home, and I feel like that has pushed demand to artificial levels that we've never seen before with tech products. So these cards right here, these RTX 3080s and all these other graphics cards coming out, they're almost like digital gold. They're almost like a Bitcoin, except they'll actually give you a gaming experience. So the bottom line is, with stock problems, I've spoken to a few GPU manufacturers. They are shipping out cards as soon as they can. And I spoke to Gigabyte as well. They said they had stock every week. They've got all models coming into Australia. They're fulfilling orders. So they're doing their best. And that's what I've heard from retailers too, not just from Gigabyte themselves. And don't worry, if there's someone who wants to buy a graphics card and give a company profit, you can bet your bottom dollar that they're going to be trying to fulfill those orders as soon as possible. So bottom line, if you want a 3080 or a 6800 XT in particular, they're going to be the two most demanded cards on the higher end. So if you are desperate to get some good frames, you may want to consider a different card, especially from a manufacturer other than Asus with the Asus TUF, where I'm told from everyone universally that that card is just through the roof in terms of demand. Anyhow, the latter half of today's video is going to be talking about driver issues or black screens and other problems that people have been telling me. People have been DMing me as well and saying, look, what's up with 3080s? I've been hearing there's been some problems with black screening, and I've been hearing other people on other GPUs have been having problems. And one thing for me, I'm going to actually talk about this a little bit more in focus here, where Gigabyte actually loaned me 4 of their cards because I said to them, like, yo, can I test a heap of your cards to see if they crash? I want to inspect this and I want to get to the bottom of it. So I spent a few days testing out the Gigabyte cards here, just leaving them on stress tests, benchmarking them, and none of them cut out. But one thing I'm going to say is this right here. We're going to look at just a power supply that I got here off the internet. It was like a pretty mediocre one, not even mediocre. We're going to probably do a dedicated video on this later. But this is a 650 watt power supply. That's what they're saying on the box. But when we look a little bit closer, this is not a true 650 watt power supply. I think it's more like a 450 watt, if that. But we're gonna see now, if we put this RTX 3080 on this power supply right here, what is gonna happen? Are we gonna get these issues that people have been reporting about, where you get potentially a black screen or your PC resets? Because I think that's what's going on. If you're getting a high-end GPU like a 3080, then you've got to be spending a bit more money on your power supply. Here is where it makes perfect sense. But here's the thing, in the past, we have done videos on budget power supplies, but they've always been true rated power supplies. And so I feel like if you're going with a 3080, make sure you're getting at least a true rated 650 watt power supply, or in this case, NVIDIA recommends a 750 watt power supply. And that's a 750 watt continuous with the big W. But let's put this power supply through the tests here and see what unfolds. So this beautiful 650 watt power supply, there's already one little problem, and that is, well, actually two big problems. And that is the 8-pin, there's only one of them. And the GTX 3080 in particular needs 2 8-pins. And some, if you get a custom models, they might even need 3 8-pins. So this power supply is just like not geared up from the get-go. We're gonna use an adapter here to get the other 8-pin connected. And another thing is the gauge wire, the thickness of it is so thin. Like I'm gonna be honest, this is the thinnest gauge wire I've seen on a so-called 650 watt power supply. So before we even hit the power switch, I'm feeling a little bit nervous. Fuck yeah, bro. That's a little pump? So we're now on the Tomb Raider menu and we haven't even benchmarked the game yet. Our power supply is booted up. We are running about 650 watts from the wall. I think that's smoking. I think I heard a noise. I think I heard something. Let's see if we can run the benchmark. Let's see if this 650 watt power supply can really do 650 watts. I didn't hear a good sound coming out of it then. Ah, no. Oh, that's 740 watts. Uh-oh.
Look at that power consumption.
Uh-oh, something's not right. What's it?
730, 7... That's...
This thing's gonna blow up, dude.
Right.
Like, this does not sound good.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
yes.
okay, it turned off.
It did it itself. Well, no, it cut out.
Okay, there's your black screen. There's your black screen and restart right there.
It's not...
I'm, okay. Yikes. I like, that is just, it's not good to do that.
Oh, that smells rank.
Yeah. Okay, we're not, like, look, I know I'd like to show you guys these tests, but I generally don't feel comfortable doing this stuff because you can also take out components when these power supplies like this do this stuff. We've got to open the window here. Damn, that reeks. Okay.
That is not a...
Oh, okay,
that's not
that
a healthy
stinks.
smell, that's toxic.
So basically, this is what happens. Like, we've shown you a pretty garbage tier power supply right here. It says it was 650 watts. I mean, look, it was running 650 watts for like a couple of minutes from the wall, but it was not giving out 650 watts to these components. I've tested this setup or something very similar, and it does use up about 480 watts on the Shadow of the Tomb Raider benchmark. So what we're seeing here is the exact problem that a lot of guys may be experiencing if they're running high-end gear. And that is they might be using a mediocre power supply. They might have something better than this right here, but it's still not 100% for their 3080. And so what that means is you will get a black screen. You may get a restart, and it might not even be NVIDIA or AMD's problem if you've got these kinds of power supplies. So I think what we've shown here is good enough to at least say, hey, if you're experiencing black screen problems and you're in forums and you're asking for help, or you're on driver forums, maybe state what power supply you've got and the rest of your equipment. And now we're gonna close this video off with saying, if you're in the market for a high-end PC and you're putting a high-end GPU in there, always check your power supply and what you're using. And so what we're gonna see is when people say, oh, did reviewer X have problems with their GPU? A lot of the reviewers are probably not going to have problems, because I know for a fact, like all the guys that I know that review cards are using high-end power supplies. I'm using an HX 1000 on my test bed, and that's a platinum rated power supply. Corsair are a channel sponsor, so they love it when I use their gear. But that being said, it's an expensive power supply, but it's got some of the lowest ripple and some of the best power delivery in the game. So when you do these things, you want to make sure that if you're buying a high-end graphics card, buy a high-end power supply. And so this VP650 from GameMax, this thing didn't even pass one benchmark in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which I know that game, when I've loaded it up in stress tests before from a decent power supply, it'll use under 500 watts with this configuration. So the fact that it's going to like 650 and then even 750 at one point shows that not only is the efficiency terrible, but the thing's just heating up and becoming like its own worst enemy. And then that's what caused the whole system to black screen and shut off. Though you probably in that vlog section heard me worried about using this power supply, and that was because it was going over its limits. And so when something goes over its limits, it should just shut off automatically. And so I heard these weird ticking noises, and I've heard those noises before. As though something like this doesn't have, I guess, proper protections in place either. And so that's when you're going with a cheaper power supply, do keep that in mind. In fact, the only time I'd ever use something like this power supply right here would be on an entry-level banger that's using maybe 100 watts from the wall. And even then, it's kind of like, well, Anyway, we'll make another video towards power supplies because I think people really need to understand that if they're buying high-end gear, or even a 3070 or a 3060 Ti is going to come out soon, you need to couple that stuff with decent gear because of the fact that we're going down to 8 nanometer and on AMD's side, 7 nanometer. It needs very good power delivery. Anyhow, another big thing for you guys out there with the Gigabyte cards, especially the Eagle. People were like, well, the Eagle was crashing out. And my guess there would just be correlating the fact that they've bought the cheapest RTX 3080 and they've perhaps cheaped out on some other components. So when I tested the Eagle, I had that in the studio here. I had the Vision G, I had the Gaming OC. So these 4 Gigabyte cards that came through here, they were absolutely fine. And in case of the Vision G and the Gaming OC and the Eagle, they all shared a very similar cooler, not just in weight, but also temperatures and noise. And I'll pull these numbers up for you guys here because this is one of the most important things when you're buying a high-end GPU, because nowadays especially, NVIDIA and AMD are very tight on their board partners and what they can push through as being okay for retail shelves. I know this because I've spoken to both sides of the camps and they have very good board partner policing, let's put it that way. And what we're seeing is that these cards out of the box, they're giving out decent noise levels. Vision G was 75%, 66 degrees, and this is in relatively hot ambience too. The Gaming OC was very similar, and also the Eagle was performing absolutely fine. Though the 60% manual speeds were getting pretty hot, near that of thermal throttling levels, so you will want to leave it on auto, which does take the cards to roughly 75 to 80%, but it was around about 43 to 44 decibels noise, so that's absolutely fine. The 3070 that came through, that was 75% at 67 degrees too. So the noise and temperatures, as long as your card isn't thermal throttling, you're getting what you are paying for, especially on a 3080. So that's the most important thing with a card. Make sure it's not thermal throttling. If it is thermal throttling, then do make sure that you've got good airflow to that GPU as well. If you put it in a really low-end case with no airflow and it starts hitting 83 degrees, then that's because it just doesn't have fresh airflow. It doesn't have cold air coming in to cool it down. So that's another thing to consider too. Anyway, that aside, if you guys have any questions or comments about today's video, then be sure to drop a comment in the comment section below. Hopefully this has answered some questions about stock problems, driver crashes, and what's going on in 2020. Now, one thing I will say, it's just such an unusual year. Nothing's really changed in terms of what I've done 2 years ago compared to what I've done this year, where in my recent Aorus 3080 review, a lot of people were getting angry that tech tubers are getting cards to review. But from what I'm told is these cards are coming in stock. There's just so much demand that it's just outweighing supply heavily. And what I'm told from different sources is that they've actually got more cards than they did during the Turing season. So Nvidia's doing, I know Nvidia's doing their job to get these cards pumped out as much as possible. It's just, it's hard to get your hands on one. And so instead of having the question of the day, we got the comment of the day, which is from Lord Crichton. And thank you for understanding the situation. He says, all these reviews for GPUs lately, I don't agree with people when tech tubers review them and they get mad at you. This is your job. And when they do come in stock, it's not like these reviews are worthless. So just pausing that bit there. It's exactly what we're doing. This is my job. And when Gigabyte and Aorus and all the other companies and Asus, ASRock, when they send stuff in for review, that's my job to test it out, share all the details with you guys to help you make the proper purchasing decision. But also I take those points from the video and relay them back to the company and say, look, you could improve on this, this, and this, basically what we said in the review. And for instance, from yesterday's video with the Aorus 3080, I said to Gigabyte, you guys could touch up that silent OC BIOS. It's the only thing that I found wrong with that card. Everything else was really good. And at the end of the day, it is a crap situation that 2020 has brought upon us. This is just one of those extra crappy things where everyone wants to game on PC and they want the high-end stuff. Well, the market for the high-end stuff has really increased with the amount of time, or the amount of more time that people spend at home than they otherwise would. And I mean, nothing's changed in the way I've been doing my job for the last few years. It's just, it seems like you're now the target and people are locking on and they're like, yo, here's the problem, the tech reviewers. And guys, really, when you think about the tens of thousands of cards that are being moved every month, tech reviewers would only account for 0.001% of those cards. The one more thing I will say is that it was much easier for me to get 3070s than it was for 3080s. And so that's why I was talking about 3080s in the intro, because the 3070s seem like they're just coming into stock now. People can buy them. And I mean, look, the 3070 is a really good card. It performs really well. I just think people want that GDDR6X. They want that extra performance from the 3080. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, then be sure to hit that like button for us. And I'll catch you in another tech video very soon. Also, on the way out, if you're enjoying the Tech Yes content, be sure to hit that sub button, ring that bell, and I'll see you next time. Peace out for now. Bye.